Hello and welcome to the evening news. My name is Dino. And here is the stories. Moms defend dead sons' reputations after police shooting in Negril. The mothers of the two men who were fatally shot by the police at Red Ground in Negril, Westmoreland, on Monday, are hellbent on proving their innocence. Yesterday they were joined by other family members and close friends who staged a heated protest outside the Negril police station in the parish. The men, 40-year-old Richard Tupac Mosley, and 20-year-old Shane Grandison, both of Red Ground, were fatally shot by the police while traveling in a motor vehicle in their community about 6:50 p.m. on Monday. Grandison's mother, Ingrid Grandison, told the Gleaner that her son was a well-behaved young businessman, who has been at the helm of their family businesses ever since his father died. "My son is a UTech, University of Technology, student. Since his father died in 2020, he helps me to take care of his transportation business," she said. The elder Grandison said that, up to the final hour of his death, her son, who managed the family tour company, had just finished taking guests on tour in Negril, and was walking from his house when he saw Mosley, who is a close family friend, stopped him, and asked him for a lift in his motor vehicle. How can someone of that status shoot at the police? How can someone who just applied for a gun license, got approved, got the gun already, and is just waiting on the ID to go for the gun, will want to shoot at the police? To get a gun license they have to run a background check on you, so do you think someone like my son, who is one of Negril's promising young men, whose family owns one of Negril's most popular resorts, would throw his life away by shooting at the police? The mother asked. She was joined by Joanna Young, Mosley's mother, who also maintained her belief in her son's innocence. "Them just shoot him and carry him, throw him down a salve, and talk 'bout him a gunman. But him never have no gun 'pon him," Young said. "Him is just a jovial person. The only thing him do, him sell him ganja, him is just a ganja man, so there was no shootout." Both grieving mothers were among a large group of disgruntled protesters who took part in the demonstration outside the Negril police station. The police, in a report, said they received information that armed men were traveling in a white Toyota Fielder motor car and went in search of the vehicle. According to the lawman, the vehicle was spotted and intercepted in the Red Ground community, and immediately one man alighted from the vehicle, opened fire at them, and ran into nearby bushes. They say the fire was returned, resulting in Grandison and Mosley being fatally shot, and an illegal firearm recovered from the scene. Deputy Superintendent of Police Sean J. Mitchell, who serves as the zone commander at the Negril and Little London police stations, said the two men were shot by the police during a confrontation. "Well, sometime last evening, two men were shot by the police during a confrontation. A firearm was recovered during that incident, and at this moment relatives are protesting the deaths of at least one of the persons that were involved, and as such they have gathered outside the police station," Mitchell said. The Independent Commission of Investigations is currently conducting an independent probe of the circumstances surrounding the incident last night, and we expect that at the end of the day, the truth will be revealed, and at least we will be able to provide some solace for the relatives and friends of the deceased persons. Mitchell also appealed to the protesters not to take the law into their own hands, and urged anyone with information that could assist the police or Indicom in their investigations, to report to their relevant offices. Photos show both men who were fatally shot by the police in Red Ground, Negril, on Monday. Photo of two mothers of both men, and other relatives and friends protested their innocence outside the Negril police station in Westmoreland, on Tuesday. Two men were fatally shot near an examination depot in Spanish Town. The bloodletting continues in Spanish Town, St. Catherine, with two men being gunned down along Jobs Lane this morning. They have been identified by the police as Nine Head and Big Back. It is reported that at about 8 o'clock explosions were in the vicinity of the Spanish Town examination depot. Checks were made and the two men were found suffering from gunshot wounds across from the entrance of the depot. It is reported that they were fired on by occupants in a vehicle that drove up. The scene was processed by cops attached to the St. Catherine North Police Division. The incident is being probed by the police's Major Crime Investigations Division. No motive has been established for the double murder. The fatal shooting brings to 5 the number of murders in the police division in the last 48 hours. Haitians who landed in Portland did not seek asylum, Morgan. Information Minister Robert Morgan said the government had no choice but to deport Haitians who arrived in Jamaica via boat last Monday as it had to act in accordance with international law. Jamaica is a signatory to all the relevant protocols as it relates to persons who find themselves in these positions, and we are ensuring that we follow these protocols, he said. Morgan was speaking on Wednesday at a post-cabinet press briefing, where he reiterated statements made by Foreign Affairs Minister, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith last week. 29 Haitians were charged with illegal entry and placed before the court. The 24 men and 5 women were each fined $7,000 or 3 days in prison at hard labor. The police said arrangements are being made by the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency to have them returned to Haiti. According to Morgan, upon arrival, the Haitians were briefed on their rights as illegal immigrants, including the option to apply for asylum. But, he said, no application for asylum was made. They would have been, based on the treaties that we signed, advised of the rights that they have as persons who enter the country and the circumstances that they have, he said. The other thing that we must take into consideration is not to assume that the intended destination of the individuals was Jamaica. There have been circumstances in the past where, due to the trade winds, they are seeking to go to the north but they end up in the south. I'm not speculating, but because they have not applied for asylum, then a particular process has to take place from the Jamaican government, he added. The minister, in the meantime, said the action taken by the government will not affect Prime Minister Andrew Holness' advocacy for CARICOM and the international community to work together to address the security and humanitarian crises facing Haiti. In his latest plea, Holness urged countries in the European Union to seriously consider contributing financially to the efforts to help alleviate the challenges facing the Caribbean country. As Haitians look to rise up from their adversities and to make their country one of promise and not of continuous conflict, let us take the additional steps needed to bring them hope. Let us deliver through decisive action so that there can be peace, stability, and prosperity for a people that have suffered for far too long. Let us act now, he said. He made the call while addressing the EU Caribbean leaders meeting on Monday in Brussels, Belgium. Civil rights groups sue Florida over its new immigration law. Miami, AP. Several civil rights groups filed a federal lawsuit on Monday challenging Florida's new immigration law. The Southern Poverty Law Center, American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU of Florida, Americans for Immigrant Justice, and the American Immigration Council filed the lawsuit in Miami federal court against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Attorney General Ashley Moody, and statewide prosecutor Nicholas B. Cox on behalf of the Farm Worker Association of Florida and others, according to court records. The legislation that DeSantis, a Republican, signed into law in May bolsters his migrant relocation program and limits social services for immigrants lacking permanent legal status. It also expands requirements for businesses with more than 25 staffers to use E-Verify, a federal system that determines if employees can legally work in the U.S. Another provision requires hospitals that accept Medicaid to include a citizenship question on intake forms. The lawsuit specifically focuses on provisions that criminalize the transportation of individuals into Florida who may have entered the country unlawfully and have not been inspected by the federal government since. The complaint states it is unconstitutional for a state to unilaterally regulate federal immigration and subject people to criminal punishment without fair notice. It also asserts Florida's use of the term inspection is incoherent and unconstitutionally vague. DeSantis launched a campaign for the 2024 GOP presidential nomination in May, playing up his tough stance against illegal immigration. "We did it for no reason." White Henry, the 33-year-old farmer who is serving life for the 2016 double murder of American missionaries Randy Hensel and Harold Nichols, on Tuesday in a seeming attack of conscience, claimed that he and his co-accused Andre Thomas, who is now on trial for the slayings, had no motive for killing the men. Blurting out the admission in the absence of the widows of the men, who, supported by close friends, have been observing the trial over the past 2 weeks, Henry said, "My lord, we did it for no reason. We were so foolish. We made a mistake, my lord, and that's why I wish to tell the court the truth about it, my lord, and say I'm really sorry to the court and the family members." The harried answer came after members of the jury asked whether they had any questions for Henry, who had been grilled by the defense and re-examined by the Crown, pressed him to say whether the motive for the attack and murder was order to rob or for some other reason. Nichols, 53, and Hensel, 49, his colleague missionary for the Pennsylvania-based Teams for Medical Missions, went missing on Saturday, April 30, 2016, after leaving their Tower Isle, St. Mary, homes on motorcycles to visit a site where they would be doing some charity work the following week. When they did not return, a search party later that day discovered Hensel's body lying face down, his green helmet still over his head, with his arms bound tightly behind his back by a piece of cloth torn from the green t-shirt in which he was clad. Nichols' body was found some distance away on a Sunday afternoon. A consultant forensic pathologist contracted by the National Security Ministry disclosed that Hensel died instantly from a single bullet to the head fired at close range, while Nichols, who was still alive after being shot once in the back, died from one of 6 chop wounds to his head delivered with enough force to chop the branch of a big tree. In the meantime, Henry, earlier on Tuesday while being re-examined by the Crown, was asked to say which version of his account of the incident was true because of a variance in his statement to the police prior to the trial and his testimony before the trial. A senior prosecutor in re-examining Henry following the completion of his cross-examination by the attorney for Thomas, Leroy Equiano, said, "Based on your answers to my learned friend, before coming to court you had told the police that you shot the man who was lying on the ground as well as the man whom your cousin ran down. But here in court, when you were answering my questions, you said that your cousin shot the man who was running and you shot the man who was lying down on the ground. Which of those two things is the truth or the correct one, Mr. Henry?" Said Henry, "Andre Thomas did stand up with the gun, he shoots him and he ran, off, while he was run, off, I run back of him. We run down the man together. The two of us run him down while we run, we saw the man in a pool of water, then Andre Thomas shot him in his head, then the two of us come back up to the top where the next man was and I shoot the next man in his head back. Just one shot." Asked to explain the reason why he gave the police a different version from what he told the court, Henry said, "Because I wished to tell the truth to the court, I was sad about what happened, what me and Andre Thomas did, so I tell my lawyer that I want to sign a plea bargain and wish to tell the whole truth to the court." Pressing further, the prosecutor said, "Before you came to court, you told the police that you shot the man who was lying on the ground first, but here in court when you were answering my questions, you said that Andre Thomas shot the man who was running first, so can you please tell us which of the two things is the truth?" Following an objection by Equiano, Henry replied, "The truth is, Andre Thomas first, the man he was holding, he fired a shot after that man and that man was running and the two of us was, running him down, and while running him down the man fell into a pool of water and then Andre Thomas chopped him in his head and then we came back up to where the other man lying down with his two hands tied behind him, and I shot him in his head back. That's the truth, the whole truth." Last Tuesday, in being led through his evidence by the senior prosecutor, Henry, who will be eligible for parole after serving 28 years, said on the Saturday morning in question he and Thomas were up in the bush, chopping jelly, coconuts, when they saw the two men approaching on motorbikes. He claimed that Thomas stopped the men at gunpoint and told them to get off the bikes. Henry said he told one of the men to lie down on the ground and tied him up with a piece of cloth torn from the shirt he wore. He said the next man ran off and was fired on by Thomas. He said he joined Thomas in chasing that man, leaving the other man tied up. While we running him down, the man fell in a pool of water, Andre Thomas shoot him then he chops him in his head with a machete. Then we came back up to the top where we tie up the next man, then I shoot the next man in his head back, I do it, miss, then we go our separate ways, Henry said. According to the inmate, Thomas was the one who gave him the gun so he could shoot the victim. The matter, which is being heard by Supreme Court Judge Justice Leighton Pusey with a jury, resumes today at 10 a.m. Accused murderer of American missionaries points finger at cousin. A retired deputy superintendent of police this morning testified that accused murderer Andre Thomas told him that it was his cousin who had killed the two American missionaries in St. Mary in 2016, claiming me afi mek some duppy dis year. Thomas, who was charged with the murders of 48-year-old Randy Hensel and 53-year-old Harold Nichols, is currently being tried in the Home Circuit Court. Thomas was jointly charged with Dwight Henry, a St. Mary farmer. However, Henry pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder in January under a plea deal and was sentenced to 28 years to life. The 2 missionaries were found dead in Wentworth District in St. Mary between. They were reportedly last seen alive when they left Tower Isle, St. Mary, on motorcycles at about 8 a.m. on April 30, 2016. Henry, the prosecution's main witness, earlier testified at the trial that both he and Thomas had shot and killed one of the missionaries. He added that Thomas had chopped the man he shot in his head multiple times. According to Henry, it was Thomas who stopped the men at gunpoint while they rode past them. But, the police witness told the court this morning that following the murder, Thomas led cops to the scene of the crime, and before showing the police the spot where Hensel's body was found, he said, "Me go tell you how it go." The officer said Thomas, despite being cautioned, proceeded to give him his version of the murder, which was recorded and witnessed by a corporal. Recounting what he was told, the senior officer said Thomas told him that it was Henry who had tied up one of the men before chasing the other, shooting and chopping him. Henry, during his testimony, had admitted that he was the one who had tied up Hensel and shot him in the head after Thomas chased the other and killed him. The officer further testified that Thomas had shown the police a church in Port Maria where he met Henry on the morning of the murder before they traveled to Henry's father's house in Wentworth, where he claimed they had porridge prior to the murder. The statement in question was tendered into evidence despite objection from Thomas' lawyer Leroy Equiano on the basis that the statement was not voluntary and was taken under oppressive means. The police witness, however, told the court that Thomas was not beaten, forced, or threatened to give the statement. Meanwhile, the witness, in reading the contents of the statement, said Thomas told him that while he was waiting on Henry, Thomas told him to check on the bikes when he went up into the bushes where he saw one of the men tied up lying on the ground. He said the other man then ran off and Henry fired at him but missed before chasing him and shooting him. Thomas further reported that Henry took the man's wallet and their cell phones. He also reported that Henry told him that the white man slaved Y and him a chicken out. But, Thomas claimed he told Henry, "Me nu de ponda one ya," and Henry said me afi mek a duppy dis year. Thomas, in the statement, also said that one of the missionaries told Henry that he was a pastor but he said he didn't do business.